Welcome to the final hour of the Situation Room. Where are you? As anything started happening on wherever you are? Why must we talk about demonstrations as people torching tires on the streets?
Yes.
People coming out and screaming and throwing stones. Why must that be the...
And why must it be tolerated, to be honest?
Definition
should people not just march? Precisely what they said. March, chant, sing, walk.
And go back to
yes.
where you came from later.
Why does protest have to involve the burning of tires, breaking of windows, throwing stones at...
Looting people's private businesses?
Why must it be that? Why?
It's true. It's a good question, because the truth of the matter is that you've seen demonstrations, whether it's across country. Look, did you remember that there were demonstrations in Tunisia last week?
No,
did you remember that there were demonstrations in South Africa last week?
But they were.
But they were. And if there was a point that they were trying to make, they made their point. And we did not hear this. We did not see fire. We did not see shooting. We did not see, beating and looting. We didn't see that. Is it not possible that demonstrations, because you still do demonstrate, you're still putting across a point, and it's reverberating throughout the globe? Malema is still giving press conferences about the demonstrations that they had in Johannesburg last week.
Yeah.
Still till today giving presses.
We need to encourage some level of maturity in our demonstrations, because I think there are very many instances where more people maybe would like to join a demonstration, but they think about the kind of things that's going to happen.
They will not.
And they feel, I will not even be treated as part of the demonstrators because of my behavior.
That's so true, Eric, and I don't think you even realize the depth of truth of that. Because we talk about, for example, in Nairobi, just the conversations where they're looking at very relevant spaces, social media, whereby the middle class has been accused many times of saying, you're not even involved in this. You sit and you're a Twitter warrior or you're a keyboard warrior, but the chances of you being seen on the street are very minimal, right? And then I heard a lady say to me, she said, you know what? Some of the things that they're talking about, I would actually like to march on Kenyatta Avenue and march from point A to point B and let my voice be heard. But for the life of me, because of what I see, I am not going to go and be clobbered, number one. I'm not going to go and be stuck in any kind of melee. But I want my voice to be heard. How do you deal with two ends of a spectrum like that? Whereby on one hand, you're being accused of not being participatory in terms of things like this. But then you fear literally for your life in terms of what could happen, because you will not be allowed to picket or to lobby in a sane manner. And I think it ought to be looked at, really. It really ought to be looked at. So much so that when anybody hears protests or picketing or lobbying being in the security personnel of the government, your first reaction is one of control or violence. You go and talk to police today, talk to army, talk to GSU, and you hear about protests, they're thinking, is that not what it is?
Yeah.
Whereas in many countries, true, this is the thing. Whereas in many countries, police are out to protect the protesters. Which is what it ought to be.
Much as we talk about, all right, the way the police are reacting, police should not provoke the protesters. There are very many instances where it's not the police who are provoking the protesters. Very many of those instances. It is because the protesters and the way they've organized themselves, there are elements in those protests that are just rowdy. And you don't have to be that way. You don't have to come out and torch tires and then place them and burn the roads and do all this manner of things for you to be heard. That's not it. That's not the way you must do things. You don't have to remove all your clothes and lie on and jump on top of vehicles, of moving vehicles, or dive under a moving vehicle for you to be considered, the Otero of protesters. Surely it doesn't have to be this way.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It actually doesn't. The protests are necessary. The picketing is necessary. The collective voice is necessary. The violence associated with politics from whichever side, whether it is people throwing stones, torching tires, policemen lobbying tear gas, those are not necessary. Those are not necessary. Because they move us away from the actual issues that picketing, that demonstrations are supposed to actually represent.
Yep.
And then we have a completely different discussion, which was not even part of what was intended in the first place.
Yep. Totally. And if you look at what the leaders are saying, so yes, the leadership of Azimio has said, we want to hold a peaceful demonstration, but by words, not by deeds. You don't hear them saying, okay, so and so, we know the structure and organization of our protest. This is who we are using to mobilize the people on the ground. This is who we are using to, chaperone the people. If we see an incident where people have actually just jumped over, like we saw, people have crossed over and jumped over and torched the UDA offices, that's not because police were provoking them.
No.
Those who torched those things were not provoked by any police officers. They were actually by themselves throwing stones, and then they jumped over a fence. Now, what did we hear from Azimio? Did Azimio actually come on and say, okay, hold on,
condemn?
Those people who did it, who are they? Let's talk to them. Let's even call them. People, as your Baba, this is it. This is not how we do our demonstrations. If we had all those things, and then Koome was coming to say, Mutaniona, we now all together tell Koome, hey, Koome, this is not the language. Because we must also tell Koome, that's not the language you use. If you're talking about people are going to demonstrate, you can't start saying that, you're going to ban demonstrations, you're going to threaten me and my people. There's a way you behave, there's a way you speak, and there's a way you even send your officers. The photos, the images that we are seeing on the streets today are police officers wearing helmets.
No, riot gear.
Proper riot gear.
Yes.
From top to bottom.
Forget helmets, shields.
It is not riots that are being called for today. It's protests.
My route to this place passes near the State House. Once again this morning, it is my Uber driver who reminded me, Mzee, we cannot pass through there because they blocked it from yesterday night. I said, I had forgotten. Yeah, but we passed nearby to observe,
to see.
They were a little more relaxed today. Yeah. Last week, they were not relaxed at all. Today, they were more relaxed. They were even willing to chit-chat a little bit.
They were?
Yes.
They were going to have a conversation?
Yes.
All right. The IG has threatened that the demos will not go on. That is already another message. So people who come out...
you see, it's like asking to be defied.
See, now when you do that...
Anybody who comes out, I'm going to arrest you.
Okay, arrest me then.
All right. Now, you see, that language is confrontational, and it produces the very, very thing that we say we are trying to achieve. We've now negated it completely.
It sets the scene for what we expect to see.
Yes.
Philip KISIA is a governance expert. He's our guest this morning at this final hour of the conversation. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
How is the new year? How is it old?
Happy New Year.
No,
Happy New Year, but
I haven't seen you this year.
No, as long as we haven't met, even if we meet in November.
Yeah, it's
Happy
a new year.
It's Happy New Year. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. And yourself?
Very well.
You've not been tear gassed?
No, I haven't gone out there yet. We were just talking about it. Those who would like to join the demonstration, but they fear, they fear, first of all, being clobbered by your fellow demonstrators. Like Kundu will not be going out there. Fellow demonstrators will be looking at her and, you don't look like one of us. So first of all, we make you look like one of us. So all those things come into play. Philip, to welcome you to the conversation that we're going to have, City has the proverb. This week's proverb are from, what is that final language that you gave us?
The final language that I gave you is one that you may not particularly be familiar with, but it's called Luba Lulua.
Luba Lulua.
Yes.
And the country is called what in Luba Luluaish?
Yes, the DRC, otherwise known in French as République Démocratique du Congo, in Luba Lulua is known as Ditunga Dia Congo wa Mungalaata. That's what it's known as. But now, in Lingala, let me just, a language that all of you are familiar with, République Congo Démocratique.
République Congo Démocratique.
Bas, now you see, a man who understands the language has spoken it as it should be.
A man who understands the music.
The proverb then?
The proverb is being well dressed does not prevent one from being poor.
Being well dressed does not prevent one from being poor. What's your interpretation of that, Philip?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've just seen something on Twitter among those lies, but I wouldn't want to repeat. A student leader who said this morning, I think it's just about Well, he said, well, since it's out there in the social media, he says that if you're suffering from diarrhea, you can't stop it by stitching your mind.
Well, it's graphic, isn't it?
It is.
It's very graphic.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, Philip, 7 months on, and the Kenya Kwanza administration is now facing sustained demonstrations. There are several things. One, there's a political side of things. Open servers, Cherera 4, stop recruiting the new Chabukati, you are not legitimately in office, so go home. Then there's the other side, bring down the cost of living, reintroduce subsidies, and all those other things. Do you think it's too early to demand these things of Kenya Kwanza? Do you think it's too late? Do you think Kenya Kwanza is actually addressing these matters?
Eric, you can't say it's too early. Neither can you say it is too late. People are elected into office based on the manifesto you roll out. The manifesto is basically a promise you are making to people. There are certain promises that were made by the current administration, and which, among others, included lowering the cost of food. Basic, food items. In our case, we talk about unga. Lowering the cost of fuel. And they gave themselves a timeline. They said, in fact, maybe people should have demanded for this one a bit earlier. They said, by the time the Holy Bible comes down, these things will come down. So, Kenyans are not wrong to agitate for, reduction of the cost of living. It is their right. And a promise was made. So in that context, I think Kenyans are within their right to say, okay, you made a promise, deliver. But realistically speaking, you can't lower the cost of food in that fashion, or lowering the cost of anything, particularly when those costs, there is some, the costs which are not within your control. For example, oil. Oil, the price of oil are, dependent on other players in the international market. So if you make a promise of lowering that cost by such a huge percent, I think you are to blame.
You're setting yourself
you
up.
You set up yourself and you can't blame anybody. So it was not realistic. But the question is, what can we do about it? So this needs a lot of engagement. The administration needs to re-engage with the Kenyan people, agree on new timelines. Because you made a promise, you failed to deliver, get back to the drawing board and agree with the people you had promised other new timelines. So that's what must be done. And then, of course, there are other stakeholders like, the opposition that, speaks on behalf of those who elected them. Those also must be engaged. So you're engaging not only the politician, you're engaging the masses. You must prepare a new message. Not very easy. It is easier said than done. But you must communicate. You cannot, pass the blame. You can't now say that, you made a promise by the time you're taking over, even before you took over. So you can't now say, CT must explain why the cost of items is high when you never participated in formulating your manifesto.
Don't you think the Kenya Kwanza then has done that? Has come to the people and said, yes, we made the promise, but give us more time. For example, I remember, what was the first affordable housing project in Kibera? And the president then went there and he said, you know what, people, I know what we had talked about, the price of unga. Now, very many other factors come into play. We are going into fertilizer subsidy, we are going into this rainy season, and our cost of living will start coming down in 12 months' time.
You know,
It was a public conversation, and he said,
you
and he
see,
explained.
Eric, you cannot issue such a policy statement in that fashion. Okay? It must be issued, in a more professional manner.
Like,
You can't issue it in a baraza. It must come out as, a cabinet decision, policy, and issued properly to the Kenyan people. So by just issuing in a casual manner, it doesn't help. Okay, prepare a proper policy statement, issue it in a manner that even those of us who are agitated will be convinced that you are serious. Because if you just issue it in a casual manner, what makes us believe that change the timelines again, that we'll get another 12 months and again fail to deliver? So the point is that those costs of food items or commodities can be lowered through a subsidy. Relook at your budget. Yeah. So instead of buying new motor vehicles, okay, reduce. When I looked at the budget, I said, okay, these fellows appear to be very serious because they talk about austerity measures. But now, when the previous office holder on entertainment, from the figures we are seeing from Treasury, on entertainment, or what they call hospitality, was $1 million bob or something thereabouts. And we are told the previous administration were generous when it came to hospitality. The items they consumed were more expensive. But now these guys who are consuming only tea and mandazi, and the budget goes up by 500%, I think there's something wrong. There's something really wrong. So relook at the budget, provide subsidy, because that is something that can be done immediately. It doesn't have to wait for tomorrow.
But their argument and their reasoned argument is that, yes, we are providing subsidy, but not for consumption. We provide subsidy that then looks at the future. And here's what I'm saying. This government should give me this job of government spokesman. The cabinet sat and discussed the issue of cost of living. And that is why I remember the communique from cabinet, which talked about we have authorized the importation of GMO maize. We are going to open an importation window for maize and other food items to come into the country to address the immediate challenges we have with the cost of living and availability of food. Then they also authorized and approved the expenditure of money to import fertilizer for subsidy to go to the farmers immediately. So that was, if you're talking about policy, then there it is. It came out as communication from cabinet that this is the decision that we are taking and this is where we are heading.
Eric.
The president addressed parliament and he said, we are not going to use subsidies at this point of consumption. We are dedicating our subsidies to the point of, he addressed parliament. It's on record.
Eric.
Yes.
You are not a farmer.
I am not.
You, on the other
I'm a
hand,
farmer.
KISIA, are a farmer.
This farmer is big time. Eh?
You see,
hii mambo ya kupanda mboga hapo nyuma. It's not farmer, according to Philip.
you see, by the time you're producing any commodities, just, of course, fertilizer is a serious component when it comes to the final cost of the product. Yeah. But it's not the only cost. That's number one. Number two, by the time you plant anything, even with a subsidized component, which is, in this case, is a fertilizer, the best you can get in any region in the Republic of Kenya is 2 cycles. So maize, by the time you plant and harvest, it's about 6 months. Okay? In fact, in other areas, like where we produce a lot of maize, in Bungoma, Trans Nzoia, and the rest, it's actually 1 crop per year.
Yes.
Is the stomach going to wait for 1 year? even that fertilizer. So we're talking about measures that you can take immediately to cushion people. Fertilizer is midterm. Long term, we need to reorganize farming completely so that we produce these crops on large scale. Large scale farming. Okay, I don't know why the irrigation project failed, but now people are on the steering, they can deal with that one. But if you expect a hungry fellow to wait and apply fertilizer and wait for another 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you're calling trouble. You're inviting trouble.
So the thing
we must deal with it now.
Sure.
And the only way is, people are hurting. Thank you. We've got the fertilizer. Very good. That's medium term. But the stomach is not medium term. The stomach is now.
Sure. I mean,
Sasa hivi.
Philip, I'm of the same persuasion here that, look, the thing is that you have hungry Kenyans today, but the practicality of a solution is where everybody's at loggerheads right now. Because the truth of the matter is, if you say a subsidy, it costs money. A subsidy is not free. And so the thing is, where is it going to come from? And I understand how the optics look is that somehow there's money from somewhere else to be able to do other things. But then, are we saying that apply the subsidy today, feed people in the interim, and then by the time that is done, the harvest would have come and people can harvest and then we can get this thing rolling? But the practicality of a solution here, and a solution that can come about, that then is comfortable for everybody. And we all seem to be at a loss beyond the subsidy of what can be done, beyond wait for the harvest. And keep going at it. We know that things are tough, folks, which is what we're hearing. We know that things are tough. Can you just hang on a few more months and this thing will be rolling?
There's this underlying problem of whether this government is trusted or whether the things they say can be trusted or not.
6 months, is not being told.
No. It's not even a question of 6 months.
It's an issue of trust.
It's a trust issue. We talked about this before the elections. We've been talking about this for the longest time. It's trust. Do people trust you? Do you carry people along with you when you say the things you say? Our friend Philip here has just mentioned something about land, large-scale production. The land in Glana Kulalu,
Well done.
1.75 million acres. That's what it was. Maize was supposed to be planted on 200,000 acres.
Yes.
The issues around that particular, let me use the word space, is as murky as it has been for the longest possible time. You're never really sure what you're being told. So when you're then told that we still have land that we haven't utilized and that we found 40 acres, was it Malawi or Zambia?
Both.
Yeah, 40,000 to plant. You're asking, okay. Why are we going to plant in that country and yet we have land which we haven't utilized? Yeah, and we have a lot of it too. Okay? So there are many things that you hear, and when you pause, you ask, I've heard what you've said.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, I even want to try and understand it, but how does it address this problem that I have now? We've had people in this studio and we've asked a simple question. We've heard the plans you have. We've even heard of the money that has been allocated. Today.
Okay, and
what are you going to do so that people stop?
But this is my question here, that if the boot were on the other foot, right?
What would the other side be doing today?
I really want to understand, because I get it and I resonate with it. It is a today problem.
Yeah.
But how are we going to put... If it was you, Philip, if it was Raila Odinga in office, if it was Martha Karua today, and we say, yes, the harvest must come. We've put farm inputs here. We've put fertilizer in. We have fertilizer subsidy. We've put cheap inputs. We're waiting for the harvest. But we have people who are hungry today. Where are we getting food from today? I'm asking.
And I want to respond to you. Or do you want Philip to respond to this one?
Philip.
Are they in power? No. Are they the ones who have the burden of addressing that problem? No.
So we can actually... Yes. So this is what we are saying.
Let me answer.
No.
Are we saying that we can demand...
I want to counter that. Are they in power? Yes, they are.
I have not finished what I'm saying.
Yes, they are. Opiyo Wandayi, the leader of minority, is in power. Let's be very clear on that. Okay?
Which power?
No,
He's in Parliament.
Let Eric continue with
He's
his-
in Parliament.
yes.
He's in the leadership of Parliament.
Okay.
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 He's a minority leader in Parliament. He's in the House Business Committee of Parliament. Senator of Kilifi, Judge who? You know the judge
You're
I'm
talking
talking
about
about.
Mazzayo?
Yeah.
Justice Madzayo. Yes? Minority leader in the Senate. Is he in leadership? Yes, he is in leadership. Is he in power? Yes, he is in power. Okay? Now, are they in power? Yes, they are in power. Those 100 plus members of parliament from Azimio, if we were just to look at them from that angle, from Azimio, they are in leadership. They would be in majority if Raila had become the president. What would they be doing? What are they doing today in parliament? What bill have they come up with to say, listen, this is the former governor of Kakamega is the shadow finance minister. He would have been the man in the national treasury today. What budget would he have presented to parliament today? He should be showing us that.
All right.
Wycliffe Oparanya should be telling us
Can I finish
what
saying
when
that?
we are out in the streets
Yes.
demanding that the price of unga comes down. This is what we mean.
Okay.
We
Can I-
want X billion shillings to go towards buying maize and giving it to millers, and then that maize is given free of charge to people.
Can I finish saying what I started saying?
Yeah.
Start saying it.
Let me just say they are not in power. That is where I started off, and Eric has responded by saying they are in power. Okay? When I say they are not in power, I mean this. When you are a president, not of another country, of this country, and you're the one who has that position, that power you have is unique in that you can more or less do exactly what you want. 2010 constitution or not, reality is you can more or less. And if you can't, and there's a little inconvenience of the law, you change the law. If you have a majority in parliament, you will do exactly what you want. Now that is power. But Eric is absolutely right in that those who represent the opposition ought to be also telling us in details what they would be doing differently.
Exactly.
And so in that respect, he and I have not disagreed.
And that is my question, because we're saying that the problems are a today problem, Philip, and I get it. It really doesn't matter what side of the political divide you are on or who you support. If we're saying that Kenyans are hungry today and that there've been cheap farm inputs that have been put, obviously we need, okay, the rain is falling, Abi. Okay, in a few months there will be a harvest, right? Until then, hungry Kenyans today who don't have enough shilling to wrap around for filling, where are they going to get food from? And I don't think anybody has the answer.
You see,
Who has the answer? And if they do, what is it?
They
Let's not
don't
play
have
hide
an
and seek.
answer.
Let's not play hide and seek with this answer. Because people are hungry today. Where is it going to come from?
you see, let me also just add on to what Sitia said. Eric,
Yes.
you know, we must distinguish between leadership and management. All those people you mentioned are in leadership, including you. You're in leadership in one way or another. So to that extent, we don't disagree with you. But the functions we're talking about right now are only under the armpit of an executive. Running the economy is not the business of any other person, but the person who has been given that authority to manage the country.
Yes.
So, lowering the cost of food has nothing to do with opposition. It squarely falls under the executive arm of this
Nisawa.
country.
So then, in that case,
so
then, Philip,
you cannot ask
you and I and everybody else should
You
shut
cannot
up and
ask
let
me-
them do it.
you
You've
cannot
come here
ask
this
me-
morning
you
and you've
cannot
told
ask
us what they should be doing.
You cannot ask me to do somebody's job.
No, don't do it.
I'm not paid to do that.
But the
job.
question is, what should
Why
they,
are they living from-
what
Yeah.
should they do?
So I've just told you, Eric. Immediate, because people cannot wait. People are hungry.
So that is that immediate thing.
Immediate thing.
Translate
it
it
is
into
immediate
translate it into
thing.
government.
Yes.
You've been
I'm-
ahead of an
I'm
executive.
just telling you, Eric.
Translate it.
I'm not translating.
Uh-huh.
It is as simple as this.
Yes.
It is not long-term solution. It is not sustainable. But because you are dealing with human beings who can wait and who cannot wait for tomorrow, subsidize the cost.
What does that mean?
Remove money that you are spending on items that can wait, like buying motor vehicles,
How
and
much?
subsidize food.
How much?
I don't know how much is required.
You see?
The minister for finance, who's paid to do the job, clearly has the figures. He knows he can liaise with the Minister for Agriculture. They know the number of tonnage required for maize.
Okay, for example, let me help you.
They know, one second, they know how many tons we require.
So it's a budget issue.
Between now and until we harvest.
So it's a budget issue.
It is known. In fact, those figures were known even last year. We know.
So it's a budget issue.
And we can extrapolate. We know even what will be required next year.
Question. So it's a budget issue.
Of course.
It's a budget issue.
It is a reallocation of resources.
And appropriation
you
to the right
can
to
actually stop this one, postpone this one. Yeah?
Like the 802 million for vehicles.
For example, there are billion shillings for 3 officers for food, for
vehicles,
for luxury vehicles.
Yes,
that is an item that you can step down
on.
Either you step down,
yes,
or you postpone.
Okay,
it can wait.
Who passes that?
It can wait.
Who passes that budget, Philip?
That budget.
Yes.
Of course, if you are the majority, you'll pass it.
No, who passes the budget?
Let's be practical
here.
No. You are the majority. It goes to Parliament.
Every vote counts.
It goes to Parliament. You have the majority.
Yes.
It will pass.
Does the minority have any?
In fact, Eric, a minority they have a say.
Has that minority voted against it?
Yes, they did. They interrogated the budget and
did the minority vote? Philip, be very careful here how you answer the next question.
I'm saying,
did the minority vote against the supplementary budget?
Of course, and even if they voted,
yes,
I'm saying,
Philip, yes,
even Eric,
Philip.
even if they voted,
did
Eric,
they or did they not?
They must have voted.
Did they vote for or did they vote against the supplementary budget?
They must have voted against. I don't think they would have voted. I don't think they voted
did not
to support
vote against
the supplementary budget.
The supplementary
When
budget.
the question is insisted on that way, it's a trick question. And we already know that. We're not asking your opinion. We already know the answer to that question.
He knows the answer to the question. 20 minutes to 10. Let's take a break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With Philip KISIA, governance expert. He understands things of how to run a government. So he's telling us what the government should be doing and what it's not doing.
Yeah. Okay. So, here we are and looking at this. One thing that they've been... I'm going back to this point because I think it's important to look at weighing both sides. Right, Philip? The government has asked for time. That 6 months is really not enough. Of course, one would argue that one of the members of the former presidency, would have understood what it meant to run government, right? So making such promises then maybe was a little bit irresponsible because you know what it means to run government. However, they've still asked for some time and said, look, some of the things that they've put in are going to take time to come about. In the meantime, we're asking Kenyans to hold on. Do they have merit in asking for this of Kenyans?
You see, like City said, can you be trusted? If you lied yesterday, the before yesterday, now can you be trusted? Asking for more time, I think, is something that is, reasonable. In any event, we only work with plans, and sometimes our plans fail. And when they fail, it's incumbent on you to come and explain to people, this is what you have planned. But, we need to readjust our plans. So that's very well in order. The question is, even as you ask for more time, the time you're asking for, first of all, is it reasonable? Mm-hmm. That's what you're asking. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, can the stomach wait for that time that you're asking? So what other interventions are you putting in place to cushion the common man? Mm. I know Eric had, Eric is not starving. Look at him. So that's why even he's lobbying for a job as a government spokesperson. But there are people who are hurting this country. There are people who cannot even afford to put a meal on the table. So can we afford to wait? The answer is no. Okay. We cannot afford to wait. The cost of living should be brought down. using whatever means.
Okay.
But you know,
It is as simple as that.
Okay.
you know, Philip, one of the things that Eric was raising, and on this one I agree with him, is this. If the name of the Mwananchi and the suffering Mwananchi and Wanjiko and the TNO and whoever else was genuinely being sought after, again, we would see, whoever it is was making these promises on their behalf, we would see things that resonate with seeking a solution. The politics around the demonstrations, we understand. That is not going to solve the problems that we're talking about. If all those demands are met, the situation that we're talking about will not change. If the server is opened, it'll be opened. If the Charara are reinstated, the people will still be hungry. Nothing will have moved. Okay? Just go down that list. Nothing will have moved. So, realistically speaking, there are very many serious people within the Azimio setup. We have the former governor of Laikipia here, a renowned economist, and others who are serious, clear thinkers. As they talk to us about these things that are wrong, can they play the role of the opposition and tell us, okay, folks, not economic theory about how the central bank will act and use the powers. No, forget that. That is too esoteric. Come and tell us about the plans you have for all these things. If it's agriculture, tell us your plans. And point by point, in the first 3 months, this is what we'll do. In the next 6 months, this is what we'll do. Go to energy sector. Go to every sector. Have your shadow people and come and every time you talk to us, you tell us this is what we will do. We've criticized this, but this is what we would do. Now, some may argue this government will pick up what we say and do it. Good.
Fine. Claim credit for it.
Yes, because you've said it. The Mwananchi will benefit. But I do not see a clear plan of how the Mwananchi is going to benefit directly. If you do, tell me how you see it, because I don't.
You see, first of all, City, I thought both sides presented their programs.
Manifesto.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a program.
Yes,
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
So what you should probably be asking them is to restate that, you see, these guys told you this, we said this, and maybe we either harmonize the two manifestos so that we can deal with the problem, or they adapt our manifesto.
Philip.
You cannot say they didn't say. They said.
Philip, those manifestos.
They did say. They sold you a manifesto,
Philip,
which you refused to buy.
Let me tell you what I'm saying.
Yes.
I am saying, I understand that was politics, and they were presenting us with the political.
They were selling hope.
Yes, that's what they were doing. And I'm saying, we heard that one. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
We have finished with all that. We now have a real situation before us. Please tell us. It may mean analyzing your so-called manifesto and telling us where in your manifesto you had this in mind. Because so that when you state it, you say, okay, now manifesto in this column, the practicum of this one is this. I do not want a repetition of the political election promises, because that creates mistrust, not trust. We've heard enough of that. It's tiresome. You listen to these promises where every time you ask, there's a problem and someone takes you to the future. We don't want to go to the future because it's looking bleak. We would like the present day sorted out so that the future can look better. Because if you can sort me out today, then I'll believe you can sort me out tomorrow. If you can't sort me out today, why are you telling me about the future?
Now, City, I think you've spoken many things, but I only have one answer. You're saying what can be done now. Sasa hivi, now. There are many things that you can do. And we've said it so many times. I don't want to repeat myself.
You must repeat yourself so that I understand it. Because whatever you said before, I didn't understand.
Lower the cost of living through a subsidy.
Explain it in layman terms.
Layman terms,
Yes.
Saying
What is a subsidy?
remove this budget item that can be postponed. And, you know, I don't know how I can explain to you.
Apply the funds
And
to a subsidy.
reappropriate that money.
Okay, the appropriation of the resources to this line item.
So what is that budget item?
So the budget item we're talking about right now is food.
Okay, where
Is food.
the budget item to be removed?
Number one. Oh man, rejig. I mean, you
Okay,
had.
let me help you.
You heard what my
Let me
sister
help
said.
you.
You heard what my sister said.
The vehicles. Let me help you with
a
another
billion
one.
shillings already.
Go back to 23 CASs.
No, in fact, just make one policy statement.
Okay.
That this particular line item, travel, entertainment,
For 1 year.
will be reduced by 50%.
I hear you.
Or 40%.
I completely agree
That
with
those resources
Yes.
can be deployed on this line item.
you. Okay.
Is that very difficult thing to do?
No, it's not. So
It is not difficult. So why is it not being done? You see, Eric, we are talking about struggling to balance a budget, and we want to give jobs to 51 characters who have been working for the last 50 years. Chaps have been working for 50 years. Yeah, that is your age.
And then you
still want to give them
a
work
job.
that does not exist. So those are the little things that are being done that make Mwananchi question
And do you
whether this administration is sincere.
You see the frustration I have.
Okay.
The frustration I have
Tell us.
is that the people who will be out there today complaining that they have been tear gassed by police
Yeah.
are people who are in parliament who should be doing the job, exactly what you're saying. Okay? The issue of looking at the budget item per item, vote per vote, and saying no, do not pass this, reallocate this, move it from here to here, is the purview of members of parliament. Those in the National Assembly, I started with their leader, Opio Wandai, to Junet Mohammed, to the nominated ones, Kina, the ODM chairman, Badi, to all of them, to the Jubilee ones, all of them are sitting in parliament. They are the ones who ought to be looking and saying, we have received a supplementary budget from the National Treasury. It is saying we are going to spend 700 million shillings to buy new cars, and we have said no to that. And we want to move that and create a new item and call it maize subsidy. And this is the impact that maize subsidy is going to have. That maize subsidy is going to run and feed Kenyans, 2 million Kenyans for 10 days. Break it down. We don't hear that. Do we hear that? No,
You've spoken well,
That is
Eric.
not about manifesto. That is about practical governance today.
Eric, you've spoken so well. But the budgeting process does not start with parliament. It starts with the executive.
That's true.
So until
this executive,
until
we are
until
assuming,
Treasury,
we are saying,
until Treasury comes up with a revised budget, and in fact, I think even the law allows them to reallocate, to appropriate,
the law,
and ask for post approval.
Yes.
Okay. So there are certain things they can do. They don't even have to wait for the budget committee. They can do now,
and because since they have failed,
and take it to Parliament.
My point
for
is,
approval.
My point is, Philip, and I agree with you. Since those who are holding the reins of the executive have failed to see logic, clear common sense, as broad as daylight, and they have failed to see it, those who are seeing it and they are calling us to the streets ought to have done it. That supplementary budget, when it was brought to them in Parliament, I expected to have heard the noises coming from those leaders, the Embakasi North MP, Babu, all of them, I expected to have heard one single message. Supplementary budget imekuja, watu wanataka kukula pesa kununua magari. We are saying no to kununua magari, we are saying yes to kununua unga. And so we are going to push for the reallocation and reappropriation of this 700 billion shillings plus another 200 billion shillings plus another total X amount, even paying of pending bills of 60 billion shillings. We don't know who's going to be paid. We remove it, we give it to people to eat unga. I expected to hear that. And that's what Ndu has been asking. What is the alternative? If they don't give us a clear roadmap to an alternative, then them, plus that other bunch that is in the executive, same was up, they ought to be driven to the ocean like the pigs.
Do you remember the problem that Malawi has been having? Was it a cyclone or was it a typhoon?
Cyclone Freddy.
This one was called Freddy.
This one's called Freddy.
Now, there are countries that have these things more than others. Japan has earthquakes. They've been smart enough to even build buildings, put up building structures that can withstand earthquakes. The earthquake shakes it, the building shakes with it, and it stays intact. The US has had more than you can count the number of typhoons or cyclones they've had. Why am I mentioning these things? At such times when it's considered a national disaster, the parties that oppose each other come together. That is a show, an indication that they have the interest of the public
people at heart.
Yes. This
one.
hunger we speak of is a typhoon. It's a cyclone. These issues we keep talking about, rising costs, it has the same devastating effect
on everybody
as those natural disasters. Now, do you see our political leaders coming together? The answer is no.
No.
Parliament, who ought to have been sober, do you see them coming in and saying, guys, this one, the one have a problem, let's come together? Zero. Do you see religious leaders coming together? No. There's a nice, decent divide there. There are those who believe they're on this side, there are those. So now, leadership that is in our face and that we look up to, if they don't have commonality in this so-called common problem of the Mwananchi, who is going to represent the Mwananchi here?
The Mwananchi is on his own. Ajipange.
Wow.
Yeah, because city, you said opposition have no interest of Mwananchi. Those in the political leadership have no interest.
I don't see.
So Mwananchi is just in between.
Philip, I may be mistaken.
So what do you expect them to do?
Or misguided. Do you see?
Wajipange.
Do you see any of these large groupings that we like talking of taking the side of the Mwananchi and addressing this huge disaster that we have? Do you see it?
You see, to be honest, if we are because we're all Kenyans, I can tell you from where I sit, neither the opposition or those in political leadership currently are really concerned about Mwananchi. They are more concerned about themselves. Even those things you hear about importing maize to cushion Mwananchi. Although, Eric, just remember that the dollars are sitting at 140. So if you're importing, you're not importing cheap. You're not paying in cash, you're paying in dollars. So by the time it's landing here, so again, it has to be subsidized, even if you import. Correct? So, City, I really I would want to agree with you on that particular argument. That, either both sides sit down and put Mwananchi's interest before themselves, or Mwananchi on their own, and whatever action they take, then nobody should actually blame them. Or we do what Erica said, put them in a truck, both sides, and push them into Indian Ocean.
Wow. We start afresh.
Everything that is done in the name of the Mwananchi and the Mwananchi sees no benefit. You really don't have much of a choice but to determine that the Mwananchi's interest is actually not being taken care of. Neither is it really at the center of the discussion.
I can tell nobody cares. Who cares about Mwananchi?
But they've been telling you.
Who genuinely cares about Mwananchi from both sides? Who? They are doing it for their own interests.
Oh my God.
And in fact, the moment Mwananchi realizes that these fellows don't care about them, I think.
But they've told you. They've always told you how you feel.
It's just that we don't get the message.
The problem is that we don't believe it.
Who has told us?
The people have, the leaders have told you, the politicians have told you that they don't care. They've used many media to tell you that they don't care. But we just don't believe them. But I have been saying here, they're telling you by the things they do how they truly feel about it.
Who has been saying this for the last 3 years, actually?
No, actually, I agree. I agree with you. They actually don't care.
And they tell us every single day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That we don't care.
And we choose to ignore. Yes. Or we live in.
So instead of, and when you have an opportunity to teach that fellow a few lessons, you accept again short-term rewards in terms of handouts, and you put them back. So you're to blame.
Yeah. Philip, thank you very much for joining us today. Hey, 4 months before you come here. No, you should come again within the next 1 month.